All right, folks. Next skill, types of chemical bonds. This is going to be awesome. This is one of the easier ones to do, I think. As long as you've got a periodic table that is all marked up and pretty, then you should be good to go. And no, I didn't wear the same thing as yesterday. I just made this video on the same day as the other skill, okay? Don't judge. When you're trying to figure out which type of chemical bond, this is the worksheet that goes along with it, we've got three options on this worksheet. This worksheet allows us to choose either an ionic bond, which is a bond between a metal and a nonmetal, a covalent bond, which is a bond between two nonmetals, or we can have a combination of both. And that's how we read it on our actual paper. Okay? I took the liberty of writing some examples on the board because you're going to need them, and we're going to break them down right now. Okay? Let's start with this top one. Calcium chloride. When we're trying to identify the bond, we're not so concerned with how many of each atom there are, like in the last skill when we learned how to count atoms. What we're looking for are metals. So that's why we keep bugging you about your periodic tables. Your periodic tables don't look exactly like this. I just made this one up to make a point. We had you identify these elements over here, these metalloids, this kind of slanting line right here. This is the dividing line between all of the nonmetals on the periodic table and what most of the table is made up of, all of these metals over here, okay? So the first skill we have to develop is when we look at a formula like this, is there a metal present? That's our number one question. And in order to do that, we look at the very first element that's listed. In this case, it's calcium. Here's a little trick. In almost every situation, almost, not all, but in almost all of them, if there's a metal present, it's going to be the first element listed in that formula. So if we're wondering if calcium is a metal, then we got to pull up our periodic table and we got to look at those that are metals. And sure enough, after searching for a little while, we find that calcium is right over here. It's in the alkaline earth metal family. So it's a metal, right? Now we haven't taught you yet about metallic bonding. So if we know that this is a metal, it's going to be bonded to a nonmetal, but let's just check, just to be thorough, right? Cl is chlorine. When you pull up your periodic table again, which we've become used to taking out, if you search right over here, Cl falls under our nonmetals. So we've got a combination here of a metal tied to a nonmetal. That is, by definition, an ionic bond. On your worksheet, we said go ahead and just put a capital I. But that's how we pick it out. A metal bonded to a nonmetal. You got to be kidding me.
Interruption. Teachers, just be advised, our phones and Wi-Fi internet are all down.
Phones and internet are down.
Thank you.
So don't call me. You can't call me right now. You can't reach me. No big deal. Let's take a look at the second example. Here we've got CO2. This is carbon dioxide, right? You've heard of it before. You've seen it before. You breathe it out all the time. Let's look for a metal. Our very first element, our first capital letter here is C. That's carbon. So on our periodic table, when we're searching, we're looking for it amongst the metals. You're not going to find it. Why? Because it's right over here. Carbon is a non-metal. So remember, we said if there's going to be a metal there, it's going to be listed as the first one. It's not. Carbon is a non-metal. So we're guessing that the next one is probably going to be a non-metal. But let's check. All right? O is the chemical symbol for oxygen. And so as we look through our nonmetals, there it is right there. Oop, sorry, I'm pointing with two fingers. Oxygen is right there. It's a nonmetal. So with carbon dioxide, a nonmetal bonded to a nonmetal only happens in what we consider to be a covalent bond. And on your worksheet, feel free to just put a capital C because the options are either ionic or covalent. All right? This third one is a little bit of a doozy. It's a little bit more challenging. Here's why. We have barium, but we also have sulfur and oxygen. These formulas up here only dealt with two kinds of elements. This one down here has a third. So watch out for those, and here's why. Barium is the first thing listed, and if you're not familiar with barium, you got to search the periodic table, and eventually you'll stumble upon, where's it at? Boom. Barium falls under a metal. It's an alkaline earth metal. So we know that it is a metal. We've got to double check and see what it's actually bonded to. When you look up sulfur, and we already looked up oxygen on the last one, you'll notice that these two, there's oxygen, still a nonmetal, just like the last time we checked, and running underneath it is sulfur. sulfur and oxygen are bonded together, and they're both nonmetals. So these two here, we kind of recognize them as being bonded covalently, a nonmetal to a nonmetal, but they're also both stuck to a metal, okay? So what we have here is a combination of both types of bonding. On your worksheet, we just go ahead and put a capital B or both, showing you that we have a metal bonded to nonmetals, that's ionic, but then sulfur and oxygen are bonded together and they're both nonmetals. So it's kind of like having both types of bonding. On this worksheet, these are the only options that are available to you. These are the three situations that we want you to be aware of. So as you look through, check the first element. Is it a metal or is it a nonmetal? And then checking the second element in all of these situations, notice that the other elements here were always nonmetals. So the key is really that very first one. And having a periodic table that is properly labeled, colored, diagrammed, and all that stuff. If you are still fighting this, if you are still fighting having a periodic table that is updated and ready to go, I got my advice for you. Stop it. Stop fighting it. Just get a periodic table so it can be a good tool for you, and make sure it's labeled and drawn. You get to use it for every quiz and for every test for the rest of this semester. Okay? That's all.